Hello, my name is Jamie Johnston, and today I want to teach you how to use Power BI. And to do that, we're going to build a report in Power BI using the Johns Hopkins data set for the COVID-19 pandemic that we're having. So Johns Hopkins has been nice enough to provide that data in GitHub, and we're going to connect to that GitHub in the web. We're going to bring that data into Power BI. I'm going to show you all the neat features of Power BI and how you can use it to visualize your data and analyze your data and get you started with Power BI today. So let's get started. All right, so what are we going to do? Well, today we're going to build this report in Power BI. So like a lot of you, when this pandemic started, I saw a lot of data out there on the web and in the news, and thought, it'd be nice to kind of build my own report. And of course, the tool I wanted to use to do that was Power BI. So I went and found the data that I needed to find, which was at the GitHub that Johns Hopkins nicely provided, and I built a quick report in Power BI in about an hour. And then I thought, hey, well, it'd be kind of nice to write a blog post and show others how to build this report in Power BI and to teach people Power BI using something that's kind of on the hearts and minds of everyone that's been through this pandemic so far. So to get started, I want to show you my blog. It's right here. You can go to statcowboy.com or blog jamiejohnston.com, and you can see back on March 31st, I did a update on the blog right here on Learn Power BI and Build Your Own Coronavirus Report. But about a week earlier than that, or a couple weeks earlier than that, on March 18th, I did a full blog post on how to build the report, how to get to the data, how to bring the data into Power BI, and how to do just all the basics for Power BI to build a report and publish it in the Power BI service. So I'm going to walk through how I did that and show you Power BI. So before we get started, I'd like to just give you an overview of what Power BI is before we start and build the report. So I have a little quick presentation, give you an overview of Power BI, and then we'll jump right in and build the report. So I hope you're ready. Okay, so real quick about me. Again, I said my name is Jamie Johnston. I'm a Microsoft data platform MVP. You can follow me on Twitter at statcowboy is my Twitter handle. My blog's at statcowboy.com. And then if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can do that as well. Just linkedin.com in Jamie J. That's JAMEYJ. So after this, if you want to reach out to me, have any more questions or follow me, this is how you can get a hold of me. So what is Power BI? Well, let me give you an overview of a few of the components of Power BI. First, you have the Power BI desktop. And Power BI desktop is a Windows app that you use to author and build your Power BI reports. The best way to get it is to get it from the Microsoft Store. If you install it from the Microsoft Store, the nice thing about the Power BI desktop being installed from the Microsoft Store is it will automatically update every month with the newest release of Power BI. Microsoft has about a monthly cadence for Power BI, and so if you install it from the Microsoft Store, you'll get that monthly cadence of updates. So once you have the Power BI desktop and you author reports, the next thing you'll want to do is to publish any reports you built into the Power BI service. And the Power BI service is a Microsoft hosted platform in Office 365, Azure, where you can publish your Power BI reports and dashboards. To get to that, you can go to app www.powerbi.com, and that is how you can get to the Power BI service to publish your Power BI reports that you're going to build in the desktop. Next, you have the Power BI mobile software. This runs on Windows 10. It runs on iOS phones and tablets and Android phones and tablets. You can get this from the Windows Store as well for Windows, and then from the Apple and Android Google Play stores, respectively. And the cool thing about Power BI is when you build reports in the Power BI desktop, you can lay out how that report will look in the web or on a tablet, but then you can also lay out the view how you'd like it to look on your phone, and it will have a mobile presentation for that on your phone. It's a really, really nice feature. I'll show you that when I demo how to build the report, but it's a great feature that it's a real strong suit of Power BI, is the ability to easily publish to mobile via the Power BI service and the mobile Power BI app. The next component is the on-premises data gateway. So a lot of you probably have data at your company that's in your data centers on premises. And when you publish your reports that you build in the desktop to the Power BI service, which is out in the Microsoft Cloud, you're going to need a way to get back to that data in your data centers that are the data that's on premises. And to do that, you install an on-premises data gateway. And this is the bridge that's going to bridge your queries and your data loads from your on-premises data sources to your to the cloud, to the Power BI service. And then finally, some of you might be in a situation where you're not able to use the cloud yet. Some governments, some healthcare, some industries are a little hesitant about using the cloud right now, but Microsoft has a solution for you, and that's the Power BI report server. And the Power BI report server allows you to install it on premises and publish your Power BI reports to the Power BI report server instead of having to publish it to the Power BI service in the cloud. Now, the one caveat about that is the report server tends to be a few months behind the cloud versions of the Power BI service, and you have to use the Power BI desktop that is associated with the Power BI report server. So some of the features you might see as they come out on these monthly cadence of the Power BI desktop, they take a few months to get to the Power BI report server version of Power BI. So it's one thing to be cognizant of if you're planning on using the Power BI report server instead of the Power BI service to publish reports. Some of those features you might not get for a few months. Usually it tends to be about 6 months to a year behind some of the features. And then there's also features that are in Power BI that are really only cloud available. So some of the AI features and things like that you won't get in the Power BI report server. So, but it is an option. There are people that use it that I know, and it gives people who don't have the ability to use the service, the cloud yet, for their industry or for their company, to still use Power BI. So it's still a nice feature for some people who have that need. So real quick to recap, desktop, that's how we're going to author our reports. And for those that can use the cloud, which is probably most of you, once you author your reports in the desktop, you're going to publish those to the Power BI service, where you can share those reports, dashboards out to your end users, to the people that need to see your reports. And then Power BI mobile version of Power BI that allows you to consume the reports you built on mobile platforms or Windows 10. On-premises data gateway, this is how we get data to and from our on-premises data sources to the Power BI service. And for those that can't use the Power BI service in the cloud, you have Power BI report server to publish your reports on premises in the Power BI report server. So you have Power BI desktop, you're building reports. What languages do you need to know to author your reports in Power BI? Well, the two main ones you need to know first are M first, which is how we wrangle our data into Power BI. It's used in Power Query and Power BI to bring our data in and to build our reports. For those of you who might have used Excel and used Power Pivot, that was the language that's in Power Pivot. So if you've been using Excel and using Power Pivot, you have a leg up in getting started with Power BI because it's the same language that you used in Power Pivot and Excel you use in Power BI. It's M in Power Query. It's a very same look and feel. And then DAX. So once we bring our data in Power Query into the Power BI desktop to build our reports, as we start building our reports, we might want to create extra columns, want to create measures, which are our measures are things like sums, our calculations like year over year, month over month, things like those type of calculations. We do those in a language called DAX, and it's in Excel as well, and it looks very similar to like the formulas you do in Excel, but it's a very easy language, I think, to use and get started. So once we have our Power BI desktop and we're building reports, again, to recap, M and DAX, these are the two languages we're going to use to bring our data in Power BI and build all the measures and calculations and columns that we need to use in our reports. Power BI also supports Python. It supports R. So if you want to use R or Python to do things like data wrangling, to bring your data in, or to use some of the visualizations you have in Python or R, you can do that in Power BI. So if you have a Seaborn or a Matplotlib you like in Python, you can do that in Power BI, or some of the ggplot2 stuff in R or things like that. You can use the R language or Python to do that, to build those visualizations or to use it to bring the data in. And then finally, another feature that you can use to bring data in to Power BI is data flows. It's a new thing that's been out a couple years for Power BI. And what data flows is a online version of Power Query that allows you to data wrangle your data in, and then it's stored into a data lake, into an Azure Data Lake Services Gen 2 data lake. You can actually set it up to go to your own data lake that you can control. And then by doing that, when you bring your data into the data lake using data flows for Power BI Online, you then can connect things like Azure Databricks or Azure ML to do more advanced analytics on that data that you've brought into the Power BI service. And also, you can then still take Power BI and build reports on the data flows that you've brought into the Power BI service. So it's another way to bring data into Power BI outside of Power Query. So Power Query is where we use M. It's in the desktop. It's built in. We bring that data into the report itself. The data set gets stored in the report. We publish to the service, and it's in the service. But we also have the ability to use this technology called data flows to use Power Query Online, bring our data in, and store it into a data lake so that we can actually do even more advanced analytics and other tools. So what does Power BI cost? What is the licensing? So, you're watching this and you want to start using Power BI and you want to know how much it's going to cost you. Well, the cool thing is Power BI Desktop, it's free. So you can go to the Microsoft Store, download Power BI Desktop, start using it, start building reports. Now, if you want to publish those reports to the Power BI service, then you have to go and make sure you have a Power BI Pro license. The list price, I think as of right now, is about $10 a month, I think $9.99, and then a month per user, and you're able to then build your reports and then publish them to the server, the Power BI service, with a Pro license. And finally, there's another license tier called Power BI Premium, and what this does is it adds dedicated capacity, and it's kind of an enterprise pricing model, because you don't have to get Pro licenses for everybody who needs to consume your reports. You can buy Power BI Premium And then the users who are building the reports, they'll have Power BI Pro licenses. They'll take those reports they build, they'll publish to the service, and then if you have Power BI Premium licenses, you can assign your app workspaces to use that premium capacity that you bought, and then any report that's published to an app workspace with premium capacity, you can share that to an unlimited number of users as long as you have enough capacity purchased in that Power BI Premium to support that. So, it allows you to scale up to thousands and thousands of users without having to purchase, Power BI Pro licenses for all those thousands of users who might not ever build a report. They just need to consume it. You now have this flexibility. And there's also a lot of other features that are being built into the Power BI Premium license as well. But for right now, what we're talking about in this intro to Power BI, we'll just kind of cover the idea that this Power BI Premium gives you this dedicated capacity to then assign your app workspaces in the Power BI service to this dedicated capacity, and gives you a way to really serve out your reports to a lot of users at a nice pricing range model. So that's the basics of Power BI. To get started, next I'm going to demo it and show you how it works. And to do that, we're going to use this COVID-19 data repository. The link is right here to get to that. One thing to note, I have uploaded these slides in a PDF on my GitHub. I have the link at the next slide, I believe, where you can go and download them. And I'll show it a few more times. It's also on the right of the screen right there. You can see my blog. And if you go to my blog, and there's a link also to the GitHub on my blog, to my GitHub to get this slide deck, which has the information about where to get to this data set on the blog. So we're going to use the global ones that you see right here. So that's the files we're going to use in the demo, and then we'll do that. It'll be a lot of fun. So let's get started. There's the link straight to the blog post that I'm going to walk you through here on how to build your own coronavirus report using this Johns Hopkins data. And then finally, before we do that, there are some resources. I won't name them all, but there are listed here. A couple point out. Guy in the Cube, Adam and Patrick do a great job of really showing how Power BI works. So I highly recommend them. And if you start writing a lot of DAX, down here at the bottom, the SQL BI guys, they do a great job as well. So these are on the slides you can download from my GitHub, all these links. So let's get started. Here's the direct link to my GitHub, github.com/statcowboy. Look for this repository. I have the Power BI PBIX files out there. You can download them. It has the one we'll build out there today. It has the example of that one. It has a more detailed example that I've built as well that you can download and look at. But it's all right there on my GitHub. All right, to get started here, we're going to have to go and get Power BI Desktop so that we can author our report. To do that, we're going to go to the Microsoft Store. And in the store, we're going to go up here to the search bar right here. And we can search for Power BI. So we type Power BI, hit search. And when it comes up, you'll see a couple icons. The one that just says Power BI without the desktop in it. This icon here, this is the one for the Power BI mobile application. In this instance, this is, since I'm on a Windows 10 box, the one for Windows 10 through the Microsoft Store. And this is used just for consumption. So once you write reports in the desktop, publish them to the service, you can actually use the Power BI app here from the store to go connect to the service, consume your reports. Also, you can use it. Kind of cool feature is you can actually, if you have like multiple pages in a report, you can use this app kind of like do like a slideshow through those pages in your report. It's really cool. But the desktop here is what we want to click on to go and get so that we can author our reports. So just click on it. You'll see the install button. You click it and it'll install. Mine says launch because I already have it installed. So I'm just going to go and close out the store here, and we're going to go and start authoring our reports. So let me bring up Power BI Desktop here. So I've already launched it. I've already connected and signed in. Look up here, you can see I'm signed in as myself, Jamie Johnston. Right here. The first time you launch it, you'll get a little yellow pop-up. And if you haven't signed up before, you'll want to sign up for the Power BI and get an account going so that you can use the desktop. Again, the desktop's free to use. You only have to worry about the license and getting charged for that if you want to publish to the service. But the desktop is free, and you can go ahead and start using it. So once you have Power BI Desktop launched and ready to go, the first thing we want to do to build this report is to go and get the data. So to give you a little tour kind of what Power BI Desktop has, you have these three little buttons over here on the left-hand side. You have the report button, you have the data, and then you have the model. And these all represent certain views in Power BI Desktop. The data view, we'll be able to see data when we bring it in. The model view, we'll be able to see the relationships between the different tables that we have in our report. Up on the top, you have the Get Data button, a couple of pre-built little buttons there for some popular data sets that you can connect to. Also, you have this button called the Transform Data button. This button is what opens up Power Query. So as you bring data into Power BI, you use Power Query to bring that data in. It uses the M language as we discussed earlier. And to get back to that Power Query, we can click this Transform Data button and go and do all the data wrangling that we need to do. On the right-hand side here, you have a filter pane. I'm just going to go ahead and minimize that for right now to give myself a little more room to work with on the canvas here. You have this visualization area here. This is all the built-in visuals that you can use. There's a little ellipsis down here. You can go to the app source and go and get more visuals that are out there besides the ones that come pre-built into Power BI when you first download it. There's third-party ones. There's more that Microsoft's built that just aren't bundled out of the box in Power BI that you can go and get. And then you have this little fields area over here. As we add tables, you'll see them pop up in this fields section right here. And you'll see the columns pop up as well. So to get started, we're going to go and get the data from the Johns Hopkins data set. And that data is in GitHub, which is on the web. So we're just going to click the little arrow here. Right there. It's going to drop down for us, and then we can come down here and click web right here. And when we do that, it will pop up the little dialog box so that we can enter the URL to go to the Johns Hopkins data set to get the data. So if I come over here and go right here, we can see in that repository, we're in this time series section of the repository right here. And we have some files. We have the couple files for the US only data, and then we have 3 files for the global data. We're going to use these 3 files for the global data and then bring them in to Power BI and use those. So we're going to start with the confirmed cases. So these are all the cases of the coronavirus that have been confirmed in different countries and regions. When I clicked on that link, you can see it opened up what the data looks like. You have province, state, country, region, lat and long, which are kind of centroids of the various countries. And then when you get down to countries that are bigger, like Australia, that have a province and state associated to them, it's a centroid of that province and state. And then, as you can see, the data itself has got different columns for each day. and these numbers represent the number of cases reported for that day. So to bring the data in, we need to do we need to get the URL to go to the raw data itself. And so we just click this little button right here called raw, and when we do that, you'll see the data shows up in our browser in raw, and we can just copy this URL right here at the top and drop that in right here and click OK. And this is going to read that data straight from the web and bring it into the Power BI desktop. Wait a second, and then it pops up and it gives you a little couple rows here, examples of the data. Notice a few things. One, notice how this first row, which is the header row of our data, is actually the first row in the table, and it's just called the columns, column 1, 2. We're going to fix that. We're going to do that in Power Query. So to get to Power Query, when you connect to a data source and bring it up, it brings this little dialog box up. And the best thing to do is to go right here and click this Transform Data button. Even though the load button's yellow and it says, click me, don't recommend you doing that. I always recommend you go and click Transform Data. And so when you click the Transform Data, you're going to see it brings up the Power Query editor. It'll look a little similar if you've used it in Excel. Just to kind of show you, it's a separate window. So behind me, you still have the Power BI desktop, and here in the front now, it automatically opens it up in the front, this Power Query editor. So I'm going to maximize that again so I can see it. And so a few things about this Power Query editor. Over here on the left, you see the queries that you brought in for your data. I only have one because we've only brought in one data set. Up here at the top, you see this Close and Apply button. This is what we do when we're done doing the data wrangling here inside of Power Query. We click this Close and Apply button to close, apply the changes we've made to our data model so that it shows up in our report in the desktop so that we can go and build our reports. You can also go and get more data. So I can click right here inside of Power Query and connect to more data sources. Notice we have SQL Server, analysis services, blank queries, so you can write your own M language, OData feeds. And if you click more, it'll open up a little dialog box here, and you'll be able to see that there's hundreds of data connections that are available in Power BI. I mean, just lots. So, and they keep adding more and more. So, it's probably a good chance if you want to connect and see it, you can connect to it, including things like for people in the enterprise, like SAP data sources, Oracle data sources, you name it, you can get to it usually in Power BI. So I'm just going to close this out and go back to here. So again, notice our columns. They're called column 1, column 2. Well, another thing that it's done is it's applied this little step, brought the data in, and Power Query and Power BI is kind of smart and said, hey, I'm going to try to detect the columns for you and what the column data types are. And as you can see right here, if you look, see how it says these little ABCs? It's detected that every column is a text. And that's because the first row in our data is these column headers. Well, this isn't right. So I want to come over here in this little section called Applied Steps, and I'm going to remove this Change Type one. And the cool thing about how Power Query works, everything is done in steps, and we can remove these steps as we go along if we don't like them, or we can edit them. See the little wheel icon? You can click this little wheel to change a particular setting of a step. But in this case, I'm going to click this little red X next to Change Type and get rid of that step. So everything is deleted there. And now what we need to do is we need to do one thing cool, which is promote our headers so that in our text file that we brought in from the web of this data, these headers, see right here, province and state, become our column headers. And to do that, you can click this transform right here, and then click this use first row as header. And as you can see, it's gone, promoted that first row to be our headers, And now you see we have the headers, province, state, country, region, lat, long, and so on. And it's done this change type again for us. So it's promoted the headers and done that. But for now, we're going to remove this change type. We're going to do it again later on manually. We'll change these rows because we got to do a few things just to get this data set so that it's usable for our report. So click this little X next to change types, and we're going to remove this step here of changing our data type. So you can see they're all now back to just being text. That's what this little A, B, C says. So the next thing we need to do is we need to do one thing. If you notice, all the dates are columns right now. And when Power Query connected to the web and brought this data in, it hard-coded the number of columns that are in this file. And so we need to remove that. So to do that, we're going to click up here at Home, and we're going to go over here to this Advanced Editor right here. And this is going to allow us to go straight into the M language that's behind the scenes bringing in this data. And you can see this is what it looks like. I won't go into too much what's going on here in the M language. But what we want to do is we want to scroll over right here, and you see this little part right here. Columns equal 114. It's hard-coded the number of columns in our data. Well, this is going to be a problem if we leave this in, because what's going to happen is the next day when Johns Hopkins puts out more data, it's going to have a new line, or excuse me, a new column for the next day's worth of data. Well, the fact that we have this hard-coded in of 114, we won't pick up that new column with the new day's worth of data. So we're just going to remove this. We're just going to not put a hard limit on the number of columns. And so we're just going to delete from this comma all the way over here. And so we just put our cursor here, remove this comma, remove columns, make sure we don't delete this comma right there, and then we're just going to go down here at the bottom and click Done. Now we've gotten rid of that hard coding of that column count. So the next thing we want to do is we want to name this query, this table, something a little more nice. Right now it's time underscore series underscore COVID. That's just the name of the file. And so we're just going to drop in confirmed. And so these are our confirmed cases. So we're going to name this query confirmed. I dropped that in there, and now you see over here on the right, it's now called this confirmed. So we have our province, our state, our country, our lat, our long, and then all the different columns for our each date and the number of cases confirmed for each country, region, and or state. So that's confirmed cases. So before we go on and get the deaths and recovered, so if we come right here, I go back one to get to right here. Actually, go back another one so we can see. Before we go in and bring in the other two files, the deaths and the recovered file, we're going to do one thing. We're going to create a header table. And that header table is going to have our province and state, our country and our region, and our lat and long for each of our countries and states in our data set. And we're going to use this to build a good data model. So we're going to bring in the confirmed, the deaths, and the recovered, and we're going to have this header table that we can relate all three of these together when we build our reports to build a good report model. So to do this header table, we're just going to go right over here to where it says confirmed, and we're going to right click and we're going to click duplicate right there. So we're going to just click this duplicate. And what it's going to do is it's just going to create a duplicate table or query of this confirmed. And you see it created it, called it confirmed with the 2. And we're going to just go ahead and call this header. So if you come right over here and you right click, you can rename. And I'm going to call this header. And the only columns you want in this header are these 4 columns right here. So if you hold the shift key down and click, you can see now it's highlighted these 4 columns yellow. And then if you just right click on any one of the ones that are highlighted yellow, you can go here and select remove other columns. And what this is going to do is remove all those date columns for each of the dates with the cases and just leave these 4. So if I right click, hit remove other columns, now I'm left with just these 4 columns. And then finally what we want to do is leave them all 4 selected. So make sure they're all selected yellow, right click, and then do remove duplicates. We just want 1 row per state and country. So we're going to just right click, leave them all selected, and say remove duplicates. And this is going to remove all the duplicates. So we end up with 1 Afghanistan, we end up with 1 Australia and Australian Capital Territory. We don't have any kind of duplicates. And so now we have our header table. And now that we have our header table, we can go back to our confirmed table here, and we're going to do a few things to get this in the way we want the data to be laid out. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to unpivot our data so that all of these dates right here, see how they're all columns, become rows. And so we'll end up with 2 new columns that are added. All these date columns will become 2 columns, one being the date and one being the value for that date. So to pivot on these 2 things, we got to do a few things first. First, we got to remove these lat long columns because we don't need them. We have them in this header table here. So I'm going to click on the header table here. See how we have the lat and long already for each country? We're going to have this header table to get those lat longs if we need them. So we can come back here in the confirm, click lat, hold down the shift key, click long, and then right click and say remove columns. So right click, remove columns. So now we have province, state, and then for each province and state, the dates of and the number of confirmed cases for those dates. So now, like I said, we need to unpivot this data. So to do that, we're going to unpivot on the province, state, and the country region. So again, we're using the shift key. We're holding it down, selecting these 2 columns. And then if we right click, we can then choose to unpivot other columns. So we're going to unpivot all these date columns by doing that. So right click, unpivot other columns, and voila, that fast. So now you see we have this attribute, which in this case represents the dates, and then we have a value. So on this, on 1/22/20, so in January 22 of 2020, you can see that there were 0 confirmed cases in Afghanistan. And then you can see as they start to go up. One thing to note, this is a cumulative total. If you notice as I scroll down here, you can see, hey, we got 1 case on 2/24, and we still had 1 case. And then we had on 3/8, now they have 4 cases in the country, and 4 and 5, and then now we have 7. So what that means, for example, like if we look at this little section right here, notice how these 3 are 7. This meant from 310 right here, this 5 to here, we had 2 new cases, so that'd be 2. And then from here to here, we had 0 cases, new cases from day over day. And then like right here, from 7 to 4, they had 4 new cases. So this is a cumulative total. That's how Johns Hopkins does this data. So that's important to know. So when you're building out reports and looking at data, you want to take a good look at the data and see what they're doing. So now that we've pivoted our columns and have them the way we want to do one thing. We want to rename this attribute column to date. So if I right click on the attribute column here and I click rename right here, go back, right click, click rename. I'm going to call this date. And then I can just leave this column called value. This is fine. But I do need to do two things. If you notice, we have these 4 columns and they're all text, right? That's what these ABCs mean. Well, date, country, and province and state, yes, those are text, but date is a date and value actually is a whole number, right? You can see that. No decimals, just whole numbers. So we want to change the data type of date to be a date. So if I click on date right here in the column and I go up here to transform, I can click transform, and then right here I can drop this down and select date. And now this is a date field, and you can see that it's got the 4-digit year now, and it's a date. And that's also, you can see by this little icon now that it shows you it's a date. And then we want to do the same thing with value, change its data type to be the right type, which in this case is whole number. So we're just going to change that to whole number. And there we go. We have province, date, country, region, date, and value. Now we have the confirmed table. But if you remember, there's 2 more to get. So if we come right back here, go look in our Johns Hopkins data set for the global data, we also had deaths and we also have recovered. So we want to go in and bring those in as well. So here's the cool thing. If you remember that little duplicate thing we did earlier, we can use that trick to duplicate this confirmed table and save ourselves a lot of work. So if we right click on confirm, click duplicate, we see we have confirmed 2. We can go ahead and rename this one to be deaths. So we'll just right click and we'll rename this and call this deaths. And then we got to do one thing now, and then we'll have the deaths. We have to change the source. So if you click this, if you come over here and click this little wheel, we can just change the source of it. Or if we go up here to the home, we can go to the advanced editor and we can just change it right in the file up here. So if I come right here and I go to confirmed, and if you look right here, I can just change this confirmed to be deaths. So I changed it to deaths, I click done, and now these are the deaths. That's simple. Do the same thing. We can right click on this, deaths, do duplicate. We'll rename this to be recovered. And now it's called recovered. And we have to go to advanced editor. And we just change where it says deaths in the source of the file to recovered. And hope we spelled it right. And we did. So, and there we go. Now we have all our data we need to start reporting. So we're going to do this one final step, which is to come up here and close and apply our report. Not our report. We're going to close and apply the Power Query so that it'll return this data, model and data, to the Power BI desktop where we can start building our report and finalizing our model. So we'll just wait a second as the brings the data in. It's applying our queries and our changes. Just wait a second. And there we go. Now if you look over here in our fields, we have confirmed deaths, we have our header. If we click these little arrows, we can see the columns in each one of these queries. So just going to minimize those. And now that we have the data in, let's go ahead and save our file. So I'm just going to do File, Save As. That way, if our computer crashes, we got some work. I'm just going to save it to my desktop for now, and I'm just going to call it Power BI Coronavirus Report. Okay, so if you noticed when we were building this, that each one of these tables have this country, region, and this province, state. Well, these country, regions, province, states columns, these are like keys, right? The combination of these two columns are like the keys for each one of these tables. And so when we created this header row down here, this header table, we added this country, region, the province, state columns in there. And we can relate these confirmed, the death, and recovered tables to this header table. And this header table now becomes kind of a dimension. So if you're familiar with star schemas, this header table is kind of a dimension that includes our country data. And then each one of these confirmed, deaths, and recovered tables are fact tables. So they have all the details in them. So what we need to do is create some keys by combining these country, regions, and these province, states. And to do that, we're going to use a function called combine values. Now, I'm going to open up a quick web page, which is the dax.guide. So if you look right up here, dax.guide, the SQL BI guys, they put this out, this website, and it's a good reference for DAX functions. And so we're going to use a DAX function called combine values. And what it does is it allows us to combine two operands together with a specified delimiter to create a combined value. Now, there is this concatenate function as well, but that's not the one you want to use. If you're creating a key in tables, you want to use this combined values, because one of the things it does is it creates this calculated column, and it's optimized to build these relationships so that the join condition can be generated at query time. And that's kind of what it's saying right here in this statement. So this is a specific DAX function to create these combined keys from multiple columns that Power BI is aware of and knows how to use to optimize your query back to your data sources. So what we're going to do is in all four of these tables, we're going to create a key called country state, and it's going to be a combined values of the country, region, and the province, state. So, and to do that, we have to go and we have to go right here into this data button here to get to the data view. And then on each one of these tables, we right click over here and we say new column. So I'm going to go to confirm first, do a new column, and it's going to open up this DAX editor up here. And see how it says column equal? Well, we're going to put our code in there to get that. And so I'm going to take this code and copy and drop it in. So I'm going to drop it in. Where did it go? Let's try that again. Let's try that again. All right, there we go. That worked better. Let's see this little arrow here. You can expand this window to see your code. And if you just look, it's really simple. I'm going to use the pipe as my separator. So I'm going to name my column country state, and it's going to be equal to this combined values DAX function. I'm going to use a pipe to separate country, region from province, state, and then I just list, comma, separated out the columns that I want to combine. And so I just hit the enter key after I type that in. Obviously, I have it in a notepad over here so I can cut and paste it quicker. And that's the first one. So that's the confirm one. And I'm just going to walk down each one of these and create them real quick. It is not wanting to cooperate today. Let's try that again. There we go. Notice, just one quick thing to note here. Notice this is the table. See how it's got these single quotes? And then in these brackets, you have the columns. So this is kind of a common way to reference tables and columns in DAX. That's the standard that you'll use. So that's the depth one. Let's go do the header one. And these, like I said, are creating the keys that we can use to relate these four tables together. There is the header one. And let me grab the code for the recovered. So if I come down here, new column, make sure it's selected recovered, not header, and it did. Click in here, remove it, drop it. And now I have these keys. Now, the thing to note is in this table, if I go here to the header one, right, for example, it has our country, region, it has our country, state key, it has our province, state columns. We're going to use the header table when we want to bring in country, region, or province, state into our visualizations. We don't need those columns to be visible in each one of these confirmed deaths and country and recovered tables. So we can hide them so that they don't show up in the report view. It keeps confusion, when users are trying to know where to drag in columns, it'll help with confusion. So what we can do is we can come in here in each one of these confirmed tables, right click on the country, region, and say hide and report. And then same thing for province and state. So we can do that for every table except the header table. We want to leave those visible. And the other thing we can do is we can hide this country, state key. We don't need to see this key. This key can be hidden from the report view. We'll use it in the relationships over here in this relationship view in a second. When we relate how the tables, we relate them together with this country, state key. But we don't need it as part of our visual. And the other thing is, while I'm here, we won't need these date keys in these confirmed and the deaths and the recovered tables. We're going to create a date table here in a second with some DAX code. So while I'm here hiding stuff, I'm going to go ahead and hide these as well. So the only thing you're going to see that's not hidden in the confirmed, in the deaths, and the recovered tables when we get done is this value. See how it's still kind of bold black where the others are grayed out. So I'm going to go to each one of the deaths now. I'm going to hide, let me minimize that for a second. I'm going to hide country, region. I'm going to hide date. And then I'm going to hide province, state. And this will make a little more sense here in a second when I do all the relationships and I build the date table. And hide country, state. So the only thing, again, is just the value one that's visible. We'll do the same thing for recovered. Hide country, state. Hide date. And hide province, state, and recovered. So again, value is the only thing that's hidden. And then we're going to go to the header and we're going to hide the country, state key. We don't need to see that key. But we do want to see country, region, we want to see province, state, we want to see lat long, because this is our dimension for countries. So now we got that done. We have a key to relate all our tables together. Like I said, I did hide the date, right? So, but this is data built with a date, so we need to have a date table. And so it's a very good best practice in Power BI is to create a date table. The cool thing is there's some DAX code that you can use. It's out on the blog, my blog. You can download it there. It came from Adam Saxton, guy in a cube. But to do this, to create this date table, we're going to use this DAX code. And to create the table, you just come up here at the top and you click New Table. And this is going to allow us to create a table from DAX. So a little different. We used Power Query earlier to create our tables from the web to bring in the three confirmed and deaths and recovered tables. Now we're going to create a table using DAX. And so I dropped this in. The name of our date table is calendar. Like I said, a little reference there, a little comment showing where I got this from Adam and Guy in a Cube. And we got some DAX here. We got a variable called _calendar. And what it's doing is just grabbing the min date and the max date from the confirmed table, and then sets that as a variable, and then it returns a table that has year, month number, month, quarter, quarter number, month, year number, and month, year. And then it's using this calendar variable right here, is reference it to pull things out like the year, the month as different formats. And so that's all this DAX is doing. So once I do that, I come up here and I click this little check marks, and this is going to create a table over here called calendar. And then once it's created, we want to select this calendar table. We just select on it. And then up here at the top in these table tools, we just want to click this mark as date table. And what we're doing is we're telling Power BI that we have a date table in our Power BI report, and this is the table that's that date table. So if I click this mark as date table, I click mark as date table, and then it's going to bring up a little pop-up dialog, and all it's going to do is going to ask me is, in this date table, which column is the date column? And in this case, it's called date. So I select date, told me it validated successfully. Hit OK, and here's our date table. Click this little arrow over here to minimize. And as you can see, all it does is it creates a field that has one row per each day in our data set, all the way to the max date. And then it has some different formatting. So this allows you to slice and dice your data by year, month, number. You can add other columns in this DAX function here to get different things. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little date field. And make sure it looks right, and it does. So now we have our date table. So now what we're ready to do is we're ready to go, and we've go to our relationship to our model tab here. And what we're going to do in this model tab is click on it, and we're going to build relationships between our tables. So to do that, I'm going to minimize this little property thing so I can see it. And down here in this bottom right section, we have some little tools. I'm going to click this little one right here at the bottom. This little window looking thing has like little 4 things in the bracket. And what that's going to do is let me see all the tables in my model in one space. So I'm just going to kind of use my mouse, and I'm going to drag my 3 fact tables, my tables that have the data, my facts. How many confirmed cases, how many deaths, how many recovered cases. And I'm going to drag them over to the left. And then I'm going to take my dimension tables, my date, and my header table, which is my country. And I'm just going to drag them right here. And now I'm going to go ahead and click that little button again at the bottom. That's just the fit to screen button. And now I can see my tables a little better. And so what I want to do is I want to relate my header table by country state to all three of these tables over here by country state. And to do that, I just click on the country state column here with the left mouse button, hold it down, drag it over to the country state column in each one of my three tables. And notice as I do that, it builds these relationships out. Notice the little 1 right here. This means there's 1 row per country state key. 2, little star here means the many rows. And there's many rows because each country state, each country or state region has multiple rows because they have multiple days of reporting. So now I've related my header table, which has my country information, to each one of these. And the next thing I need to do is to relate my date table. So to do that, I just grab my date field and drag it to date into each one of my three tables. And there we go. And now we have all our relationships. I'm just going to drag this over a little and kind of drop it down. And now you can see here's where all the date columns go over the date. Here's where all the country state keys that we created earlier in DAX go to the country state key that we created in header. And now our tables are related to one another. So now we have a good model that we can start working and building our report. So let's start building our report. So over here on the left side, we've done the model button. We've done the data button. Now let's go to the fun button. And this is the button that we go and build our reports. So the first thing we're going to do to build our report is we're going to click on the view menu option right here. And the cool thing about Power BI is it's kind of looking like Office. And there's a reason for that. You know, Microsoft wants a nice, consistent look and feel from its tools. And so they've done a lot of work in the Power BI team to make Power BI look like and work a lot like Office. And so in this view, you have these themes. Kind of looks like PowerPoint themes, right? And these themes give you certain look and feel of the report. And so I'm just going to click this little arrow right here, and I'm going to go over here and click this storm theme. I'm going to let that be our theme to build our report. So now we have a theme picked. I'm going to go back, click home here so we can get started. So the first thing we want to do is let's give our report a title. So in the home field area right here, we're just going to insert a text box that we can make our title. So I click that, and as you can see, it dropped in this little window here to make a title. So I'm just going to drag it, take up a few spaces here, and then inside there, I'm going to drop a title, and I'm going to call this the COVID-19 Global Report. This is global data. Drop it in, highlight it. Let's make it a little bigger, about 24. We'll make it bold, and let's drag it over a little space here. One thing I want to point out here in this little view option, make sure you go in here and click these grid lines and snap the grid. You don't have to, but just makes things a little easier to lay your report out. So now we have a title. Let's start our first visualization. So over here on the right, we have our visualizations, and we have this one here called the map. And we're going to lay this map one out. We're going to just click on it, and it's going to drop down here, and we're just going to move it down here in the bottom left, give it a little space here, drag it up. And now we have our visual, but we need to add some fields to it so that we can map. Well, the cool thing is on this map, it can use these country names to label them. Not sure why the calendar popped up. So if we go over here to the header on the side right here, and we just drag the country region field and just drop it on there, it's going to automatically add it in our location box right over here. And this is in our fields for our visualization. And notice it put little points on there. So all the countries that it has data, it's got points. Well, let's add some information to that, right? So let's just add how many confirmed cases per country. So to do that, we're going to grab values, And we can drag it into our report right here. And notice it added it down to the size. And notice now the US, which has the most reported cases in the world, now has a size. It's got the biggest bubble. And we can color this now. If we want to color this by country, we can do that by grabbing the country region again from the header and dropping that into the legend. And so now it color codes our countries. Now, one thing to note, if I go over and hover over the US, if you notice it says there is, I think that's 34,141,951 cases. That is obviously not correct. That would mean like 90% of the US population has got confirmed for having the virus, which we know is not true. What is happening is, if you remember when we looked at the data, and I'll just click this data field again, and I'll click confirmed. If you remember, and one of the cool things is you can kind of use this to kind of look at data. So I'm just going to go ahead and click US, and then select US. This isn't filtering the data as you see in the report. This is just filtering the data view so that you can kind of look at the data to know what you're looking at. You can see right here where, you remember, right, these are just cumulative numbers, right? And so they go up cumulatively. And so the max number here is 1 million, in this case for May 11th, 1,347,881. So the problem that's happening right here is, if I click this little value field in the data tab for here, notice the summarization right here. It says sum. That's the default summarization when you drag it in. Well, we can change this to be average. We can change this to be, whatever we want it to be. In this case, let's just change it to be maximum, which makes a little more sense. We can do the same thing with deaths. So if we come over here to value, we can change this to be maximum. And we can do the same thing for recovered. And what this does is, anytime you drag this field into a visual, it just defaults the summarization of this value, because it's a number, to be this type of summarization. Instead of a sum, it's a max. In this case, since I chose maximum. So now if I come back, let me just clean up a little thing to make these a little collapsed. If I come back, click in the visualization, we should see that it changed. Oh, it didn't. Well, the reason it didn't is because the default was sum when we dragged it in. So to fix that, if we come over here in this field, see where it says sum of value, there's this little arrow here we can click, and then we can just select maximum. So now if I come in here and I select maximum, it's now changed the value, changed to maximum, and if I hover over here, I get the right value that I want to see, which is 1,347,881. So quite a few cases. So that's our first visualization. Now let's add another one. So let's add a line chart. So we're going to come over here, and we're going to add a line chart to show the number of cases by country. So if I come over here, make sure, see right here when I have this selected, see these little things, make sure before you go over and click this again, you kind of click on some white space before you click on this. Because if you don't, what will happen is, let me just do this for you, show you. If I click on this and it's selected and I select the visualization, this drove me crazy when I first started using Power BI. Notice it changed the visualization to what you clicked, which is not what you wanted in this case. So I'm just going to click the map one again and get it back the way I want it. So click some white space, click that, and we're just going to create a line chart. And I'm just going to leave a little space at the top because we're going to create some other stuff in that area above. And I'm going to drag this over. Notice these little red lines helping us line some stuff out, and I'm just going to make it about this big. And what's making those red lines, that's the snap to grid, and these grid lines, that's what's given that option. So now that I have this line chart, we want to show confirmed cases. So I can come over here, click values. That's going to drop it down there. And we want to do it by date. So if I come to the calendar here, I click the date field. Make this little go back away. And now I add it by date. It dropped the date on that timeline. And then we want to see it by country. So if I come to my header, I grab my country, I can grab it to the legend. And now we start seeing it by country. Now it's only showing a few countries because there's quite a few there in the data set. It can't draw all the lines so you can see, so it just draws a few. We're going to do something in a second that'll allow us to select which countries we want to see in a minute. But all these visuals are connected. So if I come over here and I click, let's say the US, just because it's the biggest one I can see to select, you can see how it filtered down. And then if I come over here, you can see my values are good. You can see, I can see the growth as we go up. Just starting to flatten a little. So if I click over anywhere off a point, I'll unselect and do that. So now we have confirmed cases. Let's do deaths and recovered. So I'm just going to click and select it. Control C, Control V. So cut and paste. And paste the visual. I'm just going to drag it down here at the bottom. Drag this corner. Kind of center it in the middle here. Notice how it nicely created that little center. And then I'm going to drag it so that it's lined up that way. And then I'm going to select it. Let's make this be recovered. And so right now it's showing confirmed, as you can see over here. If I just select values in the recovered, it will, excuse me, if I take the values and drag it over like that, it's going to replace the values recovered. And then to get the deaths, I'll select Control C, Control V, drag this over like this. It's all nice and lined up. And then I'm going to take the deaths value and drag it over. And so now I have confirmed cases, I've got recovered cases, and I have the number of deaths as visualizations. So I said earlier, leave some space up here for a reason. We're going to add something up here. Well, we're going to add some slicers. And the slicers are going to allow us to slice and dice our data. So we're going to add two slicers, one by country, since we're showing everything by country, and we're going to add a slicer for date. So click some white space, make sure nothing's selected. And then over here, these are the slicers. And they're really, really powerful. These are, I think, what make Power BI really nice. So I clicked on one, it laid it out. I'm just going to drag it so that it lines up where I want it. So just drag it, see how it makes those little lines. I'm going to get it in the middle of my visual like that. And this one, I'm just going to make the country. So if I come over here, go to my header, click country, see it dropped all my countries in there. And up here at the top, a couple things. See these ellipses? This is going to give us some options. And this little drop-down area, this gives us some options as well. This little thing here is an eraser. This is how we can clear. So as we click on these slicers and slice our data, if we want to clear what we've selected in here to go back to the default, we can just click this little eraser here. But we're going to do some things. I want to make this a drop down. So if I click that little arrow, I can select drop down. And now you can see it changes to a drop down. And then I'm going to add a search box. I don't have, you notice right here, I don't have a way to search. And there's quite a few countries. So to add a search, I can select my slicer, make sure it's selected, go to this little ellipsis right here, and click search. So if I click search, now when you go right here and you look, I have this nice little search box that I can search. So if I type US, you can see it searched for anything with US in it. And I can select, and I'm not picking US just to pick on US, it's easy to type. And I happen to be in the US. So let's click this little eraser. We'll clear it all out. A couple things we want to do. Let's make it so we can see the text a little better. So over here in our visualization, you have these three things here. The first one is your fields. The second one is your format. And the third one is the analytics. Certain visuals have certain analytics that you can put on them. Like, for example, line chart. You can click on line chart, click on the analytics. And then you can put trend lines and constant lines. So that's what the analytics button does. But I'm going to go back, select my slicer, go here to the format, and let's make the items a little bigger so we can see them. So I'm going to make them 12 points. And then I'm going to change the selection controls. I'm going to allow us to show a select all button as well. And that way, when I come down here and drop all, I can say select all, I can unselect all, and this will allow me to slice my data. And so like say if I want to select multiples, I can just hold the control key down, select multiple countries and see them that way. Again, if I want to clear those, I can click the little eraser and clear it. Let's add one more slicer. So select the white space, select slicer, drag it up right here. Let's line it up. In this case, we're going to grab the dates. So if I go to calendar, I select the date field to add to my slicer. Sorry, little thing dropped there. And now I have my date field. And this allows me to change my dates. If I want to just see certain date ranges, I can drag it and change those date ranges. I can also click on the little text box up here for those dates and change them as well. And it gives these nice little drop downs. Again, we can format this as well, so we can change the size of these as well, make them a little easier to see. It needs a little more space, so I'm going to just drag it down a little. And then I'm going to just drag this down a little so that it's not underneath the date slicer. And there we go. Now, we're almost there to what we had before. The next thing we're going to do is we want to give credit where credit's due. So we want to say where we got this data from. So let's enter another text box. And then we'll just drag this text box to the lines up there. Drag it to the lines up there. Drag it to the lines up there. Drag it to the lines up here. And then we're just going to drop in a little note about where the data source is. Since it's a publicly data source, we want to reference all the good work that Johns Hopkins has done. Let's make this a little bigger. Let's make it like 14, bold, and there we go. So now we have our data, and now we have a pretty cool report. Finally, what I want to do is, if you notice, I saved it. You notice right here, these headers, they're all the same. So let's go ahead and change the titles of our visuals. So if we just select like this is the confirmed one, we select it, go to this format, you have a title in here. Let's just say confirmed cases by country. Let's go down here. This is, I believe, recovered cases. So let's change the title for that. And this is deaths by country. So let's change this title. And then finally down here at the bottom, on the bottom left, over here, you have this little page number right here. Let's just, it says page 1, which is default. Let's just change this to say COVID-19 by country. And let's save it. So that's our report. Now, one thing that's kind of cool about Power BI, I mentioned earlier about the mobile. If we go to this view up here at the top, you have layouts. And so if you look, this is the default report layout. So if you're in a tablet or if you're in the web, that's what it'll look like. But if you had the mobile app on your phone, you want to see layout, you can create what that phone view looks like. And so when you go to view and you click phone, you can drag in these items in your report and lay them out how you want them. And so like maybe I drag in this, maybe I put my slicers up top and resize those so I can see them. And then let's say, let's get, let's see if that's confirmed cases. And then you can just drag them in. I'm just going to leave it just for these. Let's just say I want to show these few right now. You don't have to actually drag all of them in. Some of the things that I've had to do in the past is I create visuals that might only work only for the mobile, but don't work for the regular report, and they're kind of hidden behind other visuals. Done things like that, but you can lay out how exactly you want your mobile view to work, and you can put what you need in there. And so then if I click back to the report view, I get that. So we have a report. I don't like the color, so let's do one thing. Let's just change the theme. Let's try this Innovate theme. So I'm going to go to View, click Innovate, and hey, let's stick with that. I like that. So I get this nice contrasted view, you can see. And the cool thing about views are you can create your own. So you can browse for themes, you can customize current theme, you can export. There's a little note about how to create them. And finally, once you have this built, if you have a Power BI license, you might want to publish it. And so if I go to my Power BI home right here to publish it, I might want to create a new workspace. So I logged in to the powerbi.com, and let's create a workspace to publish this in. I have a COVID-19 one here, but let's just create a new one. So if I just come right here and I click Create Workspace, I can give it a name. Let's just say Corona Virus Reports. I'll give it a name, and then I'll just hit Save. And now I have this new workspace. And then if I come back here, go to Home, I can then click the Publish button right here and publish. Apparently I made a change, so it'll ask me to save before I publish. It's going to go in. So when you sign in up here, when you open up Power BI Desktop and you create a report and you sign in, it's going to sign you in the service, and then now it knows how to go. And there's that new workspace we created right here, Coronavirus Report. So if I select it, I hit Select, it's now going to publish that report to the service, and then we can then go and consume that report from the web. We can consume that report from Power BI Mobile. We consume that report from the Power BI app here. You can also share it to Teams, share it in SharePoint. There's a lot of really nice things that you can do in Power BI to go and use this. So we get the success here. We got it. Now if I come back here to my powerbi.com, and there you go. See my report. Notice there's two things. You have a data set and you have a report. In the data set, you can click this little ellipsis here, and you can configure it with the settings. And then data sets, how you configure things like role of security for using them, refreshing the data. So in this case, since it's using the web, I don't have to use a gateway, but I have to enter my credentials. Since this is a public website, I can just enter all my credentials as anonymous, public, sign in, update it. And then once I did that, I now can come here and say, hey, let's schedule this daily, apply. And now this report will be updated every day. So as John Hopkins puts out new data every day, this was going to refresh for me daily. And so when I go back to my workspace here and I click on my report, the next day it comes, this data updated. The next time it runs will be 5/13. It'll update. My data will have all the latest data and my report's there. And you've successfully built your first Power BI report. So I will end with this. This is the Stat Cowboy, my GitHub, Stat Cowboy GitHub. This is the Power BI Coronavirus Report Tutorial repository. There's the DAX for the calendar that I showed you. There's some other stuff. These right here are more advanced versions of what we just built. This one here is the one you just saw me build. So if you have problems building it, you can just download this PBIX file, open it up, and look at what we did. Just real quick to show you kind of, this is the more advanced view. It has multiple pages. It has some more DAX functions to do calculations. It's got like some DAX functions to do doubling times. So as this drops, that's good. There's some DAX to do day over day. So remember that data I showed you is cumulative. There's DAX to get that day over day change. So also there's some bookmarks in here. So a lot of cool stuff. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching this. I hope it was very informative. Well, if you have questions, you can always catch me on Twitter, catch me on LinkedIn. I'll show you that one more time. There's my Twitter. There's my LinkedIn. There's the stackcowboy.com. That's where this blog post is. Has step-by-step instructions on the blog post as well of everything I just did. Thanks again for joining me. Hope you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed doing it. And have a good day.